Okay. Okay, come to order, please. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second Student Council of the year. I'd just like to remind everybody that today's council is being recorded and live streamed. I'd like to remind everybody in the council just to remember to speak with courtesy to your fellow councillors, etc. And I'd just like to remind everybody who has a permanent voting place or a casual voting place that you should have collected your Ombia login as well as a green card from the front here with George. Also, if you don't have a voting place currently, I believe there are some casual places that still are yet to be allocated. If you wish to apply for one, please make yourself known to George as soon as you can, please. So, moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting. These minutes are deemed as passed unless there are any objections raised to them now. So, are there any objections to the minutes of the previous Student Council? No, those are deemed as passed. First, we're going to move on to the election of vacant councillor positions. So there is one permanent voting place on council that was left unfilled after the last student council. This permanent voting place essentially entitles whoever holds it to a vote at every student council throughout the whole year. You won't have to apply for casual places or rely on them being empty when you arrive. Anybody is welcome to apply for this last permanent voting place that was left unfilled. If you wish to run an election for this permanent voting place, please make yourself known to Angela here on my left. Is there anybody who would like that permanent voting place? Please don't be shy. Fantastic. Got someone. Honestly. Are there any others that would like to make themselves nominated for this permanent voting place at all in council? Anybody at all? As there's only one nomination for this voting place, I say congratulations to Matty Lacey, who's now registered for a permanent voting place. If you don't already have a voting place for this council, you're entitled to use this one now, essentially. And if you do that, George is just over there. So, moving on to steering committee, the steering committee report. This report will have circulated as part of the council documents before student council today, and is deemed as passed and accepted unless there are any objections raised to that report now. Does anybody have any objections to the steering committee report? No, it's passed. The State of the Union report. I'd like to call our illustrious president to the stand, please.
Okay.
Finish chewing.
Sorry, I got too overwhelmed by the pizza. Hello, everyone. So thank you for coming to the second council. It's great to see so many of you still here. I know it's deadlines coming up and stuff, so thank you for attending. So this is definitely, since last council, it's been a bit of a getting down to business month. So Freshers Madness is over. We're quarter of the way through our terms already, which is a bit mad. But I think we've finally found our feet. First point obviously has to go to Black History Month. I know I mentioned it last time, but it wasn't quite done. So it's safe to say it was an absolutely incredible campaign. Whole month's worth of awareness raising. Sarah and everyone involved smashed it and should be so proud of all they achieved through it. From the opening ceremony to the closing party, true black excellence was brought to the fore with NUSU style and sass. So well done you, smashed it. Woohoo! So next on the list is the Rock the System, led by Tobias. So this campaign's running this week to highlight oppression faced by trans and non-binary people, which I'm sure, as a very important campaign, will achieve similar success. I know you're smashing it already, so well done you as well. So as I'm sure you're obviously aware, unfortunately due to strike action, we're having to change Pablo's Rep Awareness Week to sometime earlier next semester. And then just to note on that, once I've mentioned it as well, that we'll keep all of our social media up to date. through communications with the university to ensure that you're all kept in the loop and all the students are kept in the loop on the build up to and during strike action. But to go back to campaigns, next week we'll have the ever famous Shag Week, which isn't exactly what it says on the tin, but an extremely important campaign about sexual health awareness and guidance. We'll have HIV testing kits in the union, and this will stay in the union for all year round usage. Then we'll finish off our term with Joe's Disability in Sport campaign. Whoop whoop. So as always, there's a lot of stuff for you to get stuck in with. Please do, and we're always welcoming more hands on deck. But yeah, today you may have seen that the university celebrated their accreditation, whatever, for becoming a real living wage employer. So we're really pleased that they've become a real living wage employer and that this will contribute, they'll increase their contributions to the North East. And as a SAB team, we appreciate the ethical importance of this. So we'll be reviewing our stance at the external board next week, our external trustee board next week, and hopefully we'll have a bit of a more beefy update next time. But moving on to what the SABs have actually been doing. We've already had a range of great wins, to name just a few. We've got the university, Pablo did, get the university to give every final year student an extra £10 in printer credits in return for a delay on their aim to have redistributed these printer credits by this academic year. So well done, Pabs. We secured a food fund from the university for £2,000, which will hopefully ease the pressure of financial hardships for some students. Jo is also working alongside, I don't think she's here. Oh, there you are. Sorry, yeah. Hi, Sean. Working alongside Sean, looking into travel to and from Cochrane Park and possible ways that we can make this less of a financial hardship for students. Also, we're the first university in the North East to offer Duke of Edinburgh Awards, and there's an information session on that next week. Hopefully you've seen a few posters around the union for that. I'm already signed up to it, so I'll be doing gold if no one else does. I'll be there on the mountains on my own. So please do sign up. I'm also currently working on, you'll probably see later, well, you not probably you will, in Emotion, reviewing the cost of graduations. And finally, God, Pete's all over this. You may have seen that the tampon machines are finally installed. Woo, woo, woo. They don't work yet, but that's it's one step at a time. So they're in. That's the most important thing. And the set date for completion is the 29th of November. So yeah, that's all for now. Over and out. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the President for making that speech. Moving on to questions and mandates from sabbatical officers. I'd like to ask each sabbatical officer if you could introduce yourself just when you come up to the front here, just so everybody in council can know. Please come up, yes.
Kate Smith, President.
Activities Officer. Grace Dean, Editor of The Courier.
Joe, AU Officer.
Pablo, Education Officer.
Why don't you use the microphone, Pablo?
First question.
Pablo, Education Officer.
Karina, Postgraduate Officer.
Sarah, Wealth and Equality.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council to the sabbatical officer team? Matthew Lacey.
Hello, Matthew Lacey from the Labour Society. Just in terms of the stance on the upcoming strikes at the union, I know that's been remained put as neutral by the officers. I'm just wondering if you felt it might be more appropriate to consult students' union and members before you determine a stance, so have a democratic say on which position we take, if that's for or against, so we can have an actual discussion rather than to open that out. Yeah.
So we used the stance that was used 2 years ago, because that was voted on because neither for nor against passed. So we used that in order to, not look like we weren't having a stance at all. Obviously, we didn't want to take for. This is also just a sabbatical officer stance. It's not NUSU. We didn't want to go for or against because we didn't want to, go either way and annoy students who were the other way. But also, anyone could have brought it to a council motion to be discussed at this council. So if you feel like you want to bring it again next time, bring it in the form of a motion and we can have a vote here.
Yeah, it's important to note that it is a sabbatical officer stance. It doesn't represent NUSU as a whole. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions? Miles?
Last year, NUTV, which I'm a part of, we were good enough to get a £10,000 grant from the university, but due to to a miscommunication. We thought it was a permanent grant, but it actually turned out to be a temporary one for last year, and we were only told about this after it expired. What will you people do to sabbatical officers do to make it so that other sort of societies or branches or anybody like that doesn't face sort of problems with grants?
Have you spoken to Grace about that?
Yes.
But in terms of going forward, I think I think as a team we're all here to talk to you all. If you have any issues with anything, please feel free to come in and talk to us about it. We've got a lot of stuff to do. I'm not sure, we have got a lot of stuff to do. It's difficult to keep track. But please do, if you have any issues or any other society has any sort of issues like that, please feel free to come in, chase us. That's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that, whether it's money or anything else, that we get you what you need and want and what you deserve. So please come in and talk to us about it. So that's the advice that I give in terms of going forward.
I think also just specifically with that one, I think it's tricky sometimes with NUTV because they're not a society, they're under media, so they do get different like allowances for like grants and things like that. So maybe it means that maybe me and Grace need to have a better conversation and with you and in future.
That was specifically from the capital bid from the university.
Okay.
I think there was just a bit of confusion, I think miscommunication between what NUTV were told and what NSR were told.
So I guess all we can do is apologise for that, but just make it really clear that in the future just come to us and we can try and avoid situations like that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions to the sabbatical officer team?
Hi, Emily. I just had a question about the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Do you have any idea what the cost would that be? Because I remember in school I couldn't afford to do it, so I never got a chance to do it.
Yeah,
so
so
that would be a penalised cost.
Yeah, so the woman from the Duke, so the first information session is happening on Tuesday. All sort of questions like that should be directed there. But I do know that there's a fund in place to make sure that all students in the first year of doing it will be covered. But that's in terms of first year, so if you wanted to do it later on, that might be a bit different. But all first years, all students doing it in its first year of running, the cost will be covered of it.
Okay.
But come along to the information session if you have any other questions.
I'm from the Islamic Society. It's been a while since I've come to student council, so I don't actually realise I'd get a chance to pose any questions, but I thought it would be a good chance to just, while everybody's here. Currently we're trying to, I don't know if anyone's aware, but we're trying to get like a separate entrance in the prayer space for girls to enter the prayer space. We've been working at trying to regain this for quite a while now. And 2 years ago we passed a motion in student council to support the opening hours to be extended so that we can pray all of the prayers as well as also get the separate entrance, and student council empathised with us and we managed to pass that motion. Now we're at a point where we're trying to work with the university, so I was wondering whether it would be possible to get some support and just create some dialogue because we really want to help push for that.
Yeah, of course. We obviously have our faith and belief officer, Christopher, who should be your really first point of contact. And then obviously if Christopher wants to come to us and you want to have a joint meeting with, say, me, because I'm a welfare and equality, that's fine. But it's probably best to have that conversation first if you haven't already. And then we can see where we can go from there.
Okay, thank you for the notice. Thank you.
Are there any further questions to the sabbatical officer team? No? Well, then you're free. So, now moving on to the officer reports and executive committee minutes. These essentially go through as a block, as essentially they are deemed as passed unless an objection is raised now or prior to the meeting, and no such objection has been raised so far. So, these are the Athletic Union Executive Committee's minutes, the Society's Executive Committee, the Education Executive Committee, the Media Executive Committee, the Halls and Community Executive Committee, Welfare Campaigns and Liberation Executive, and the Volunteering Executive Committee. All those reports should be available on the NUSU website and may have been circulated before Council. So are there any objections to be made known about any of these committee minutes? No, then they are deemed as passed. So now moving on to motions. So the motions for this evening are essentially divided into three categories. First of all, we have business motions. Much like reports, they are deemed as passed unless there is an objection to them. And we only have one business motion today, which is Business Motion 101 on the renaming of the Finance Committee. Pablo, you want to come to the front and explain the rationale behind the...
Yeah, So this one is very simple. It's just the new name of the finance committee is yet to reflect better what they do. But that also includes risk. So it will be finance, risk, and whatever. But it's simply just to keep. Yeah, sorry, I didn't do this. But anyways, it's just to keep the constitution clean and reflect better what the each committee does. So it's very a very routine business. Don't know if anyone has.
Are there any questions to Pablo? No. Are there any objections to the motion to be passed? No. Well, then I deem the motion as business motion passed. So that moves us on to endlessly exciting. That moves us on to constitutional motions. Constitutional motions essentially change the constitution of NUSU. Does what it says on the tin. And they require a 2/3 majority vote to pass. You'll be voting on these motions using your smart devices with the code that you should have been provided and logging onto Omvia. So our first constitutional motion tonight is motion 301 on BAME Students Officer. And this has been proposed by Sarah. So I'd like to invite Sarah to take us out.
Hi, friends. Rabs is our current racial equality officer. I've been thinking about the title name to change it because basically I felt that racial equality officer didn't really explicitly indicate in the title who came under that. It could technically imply that anyone could apply for it, even though you can't in the actual descriptions below. And I felt that BAME officer, which stands for Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Students, felt more appropriate for the job title. It also coincided with the other liberation officers. For example, the Marginalised Genders Officer used to be Gender Equality Officer, and it's now been changed to Marginalised Genders Officer to be more representative of who comes under that job title. So in a similar way, we're not doing Racial Equality Officer, we're doing BAME Students Officer. I also changed some parts of the job description. One of the parts was where is it? Yes, could you? Thank you, yes. Self-identifies as a person of colour. I think person of colour is quite a difficult term to come to terms with. Some people identify as a person of colour, other people find it offensive because of where it's derived. The word coloured was used to as a racial slur. So I think it's a sensitive term. Also, not everyone, it makes race into a static thing where it's very visible in terms of like if you're dark brown skinned or if you're really light skinned, particularly with Arab people, they might be quite light skinned. And that means it's quite difficult to identify as a person of colour. So I've taken that out now to be self-identify someone as an ethnic minority instead. Again, BAME, I've listed there what it means. Yeah, I think that's all.
Are there any questions on the motion? Oh, no, then you're free to sit down, I think, Sarah.
Thanks.
Okay, so on this motion, it seems a fairly uncontentious one, so I'm going to give one point on either side if anyone would like to debate it. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favour of the motion that has just been? Rabia.
Just to clarify, I would still be the racial equality officer. It doesn't come into effect until next year. But yeah, I pretty much agree with everything. Also, something that really bugged me was the fact that it kind of implies, racial equality officer implies that my job is to kind of like fight for racial equality, which like Sarah said, first of all, could apply to anyone and everyone should be fighting for racial equality. And that I'm specifically more to represent and kind of celebrate BAME people and like people of color, if you prefer that term. So yeah, it's just to clarify like what my job is, not to put racial equality officer into a box, and it's a good motion. So please say yes.
And is there anybody who would like to speak against the motion? No. Well, then we'll move on to voting. As I said, this is a constitutional motion, so it requires 2/3 majority to pass. You'll be voting on your smartphone. If you have any issues with voting on your smartphone, then please make yourself known to any member of staff at the front here. Are we ready? Okay, there we go.
Oh, she did it.
Alright, mine's just done it. 6, 5, 3.
You were just like this, you were just like...
It's done. Yeah.
And motion 301 is deemed as passed unanimously. Don't remember seeing a unanimous pass before in council, so that's quite exciting, I think. But yes, no, that's deemed as passed. Moving on now to our second constitutional motion of the night. This is motion 302, motion to reduce the use of paper promotion materials during elections. I'd like to call Pablo to the stand here.
So some of you may remember that in the last council, in the last council of last year, a motion was brought that basically wanted to ban promotion paper-based promotion materials during the elections. And one of the criticisms that was brought up is that paper promotion materials are still needed during the elections because there are some groups that is necessary to engage in the elections. Some people might not use social media, so they are still needed. However, we saw that it was necessary to reduce the use of the paper during elections because at the end of the day, the university has declared a climate emergency last spring, and I think is a lot of the times the paper promotion materials are wasted. So basically, the change is very simple. To restrict the promotion materials to 20 A3 or smaller printed posters and 5 A2 or bigger printed posters, and the use of flyers will be prohibited. So yeah, it's basically that. If anyone has any questions.
So, I know the motion is trying to move things to be more digital, but are you sure that all students will have access to digital means of accessing it? Or,
Yeah.
And if they do have access, do you think they'll actually take the time to go online and read it?
Well, absolutely. I think as a person that ran in the elections last year, I think in the analytics of the social media campaign, I saw a lot of engagement with the campaign. And I think that's the main reason why I have brought this, because it's still important that we have printed materials during elections in case someone doesn't use social media, doesn't have the means to access social media, etc. So the visibility to engage with those with that cluster of people is still there, because we'll still have printed posters around campus and the banners at the student union. So the engagement and the visibility would still be there to engage that people. Exactly. So that's why we still have printed promoted materials.
In the back there.
So I really like the idea because this way we'll...
Sorry, could you just stand and give your name? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'm Silanos, school rep, and I really like the idea because this way the students that are running for the election will find new innovative ways to promote themselves. And I was thinking, is it possible to extend that to the freshers class as well, for the freshers fair? At the beginning of the year. So,
well, I mean, it's something that can be considered. It would be a separate motion. It's out of the scope of this. This would be for the student elections.
Because a lot of the posters from last year are like glossy paper, so maybe not recyclable. I don't know if this is an amendment or not, but to make sure that they are actually recyclable, because it seems a bit pointless to have less posters but you still can't recycle them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's an amendment, not a discussion.
I should just raise this point that you can procedurally amend. Anybody in council can submit a procedural amendment by coming to the front, and this would essentially, if accepted by Pablo, could be added and change the motion. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, it can be added. Yeah.
Are there any other questions regarding the motion?
Yeah.
Grace.
Yes, so I do think from an environmental perspective and also in terms of like littering and waste on campus that this is very important, but when you consider how many t-shirts and like duvet covers and sheets and stuff are used during elections as well, which are considerably worse for the environment than paper, do you think maybe in the future you would bring a motion in related to that, or you would expand on this in the future to cover other
it can be
materials?
added in the future. But I think the main point of criticism last year, and I think a lot, I received a lot of feedback from students that the main point was posters. So again, this obviously the constitution is not closed to amendments, and any new motions can be brought. So anything that can be to advance in this progress to be more eco-friendly is always welcome.
Are there any? Christopher.
A lot of students during campaigning will sit at a desk and hand out flyers to people going by. But obviously you're prohibiting flyers, so how are people actually going to be able to campaign in person? Like, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for them.
Well, I mean, personally, last year I was campaigning. I was going around campus speaking with people, but I wasn't using any flyers. I didn't consider that it would be a good way of engaging with the students. So, I mean, in terms, if the question is, do you think that would be bad to engage with the students for the people that are standing in elections? Personally, I didn't experience that, and I didn't use flyers at all. I think the important part during the elections is not only handing the flyers, but speaking with the people, making sure that the message is there, and using a flyer is not the only way to deliver the message that you want to get to people.
Are there any further questions? No. Well, I'll miss it down then, Pablo.
Yeah.
Right, so you accept the procedural, yeah. Okay, so the procedural amendment has been added now to the motion, essentially to add recyclable paper to make sure that flyers are recyclable, they don't contain unrecyclable residues. So on this motion, we'll have 3 on either side. So would anybody like to speak?
The second bit of the
After
so
bigger or bigger.
So after or bigger.
So, would anybody like to speak in favour of the motion?
I'd like to speak in favour of this motion, not just because it's good for trees, etc., but also I think it's quite a landmark thing in the sense that every single election, everyone on campus, even if you don't know what student council is, sees all these leaflets, and pretty much everyone was quite annoyed with it. There was so much vocal impact behind all this, and I feel like when people keep shouting and screaming about all sorts of different things, they don't get their opinions heard, and I feel like actually passing this, and then with the next election coming up, they'll see, oh wow, like there is like virtually no flyers anywhere. I think it's really good point for loads of students who don't know what student council is, kind of give a bit of faith in like student democracy and that kind of system. Yeah.
Nice. Would anybody like to speak against the motion? Miles.
Groups of students who are already less represented in student politics, such as mature students, postgraduate students, or even such students as international students, say from China, where they may not have, say, Facebook or Instagram sort of social media apps, which everyone uses over there. They use things such as WeChat or Pidu. Like, I think if you did actually restrict the amount of about this place or the people who do it.
Would we like to speak? I'll get Alice, please.
All manifestos are on the student website, and the videos are also put on the student website, and they're also in the Courier. So like there are other ways to access it other than social media, like just like as a reminder.
Would anybody like to speak against the motion? Would anybody like to speak in favour of the motion?
I hope I understood it right, but I didn't see it as a way of shifting from paper to the internet. I saw it as a way to properly engage with the actual, because the whole point of the sabbaticals are they're meant to be the face. So it takes away the passiveness of just handing out flyers and posters. So the fact that although it will have the additional thing that it will be online, the whole point of it is so they actually go out and you see their face. And if you don't see their face, then I wouldn't vote for them, because then they're clearly not the person they're meant to be representing, because they're not showing themselves to represent. So I think it really like filters out those ones who haven't got the confidence to represent properly to the ones who are going to. So that's why I think it's a good thing. Woo!
And finally, anybody else to speak against the motion this evening? No? Right, well then we'll proceed to voting. Once again, this is a constitutional motion, so that will require a 2/3 majority to pass. Please have your smart devices ready. Are we ready to start voting? Yes, we are.
Bless you.
So the motion fails. This motion has not passed. Better luck next time, I'm afraid, Pablo. So moving on now, that was our final constitutional motion of the evening. We are now moving on to the ordinary motions section. Ordinary motions only require a simple majority to pass, i.e. 51%. And our first ordinary motion of the evening is motion 401, motion on fully digital submission of written assignments. Pardon me. And this has been proposed by Sean.
Hello. Okay, so this is kind of similar to Pablo's a little bit with regards to sort of the environment and stuff, but a little bit more to do with accessibility and finances as well. So yeah, what's been highlighted here is just like the environment, access and finances being an issue with regards to submitting assignments. So the environment is something we should all be concerned about. We're facing a climate emergency, and continuing to print off our assignments to hand to lecturers is really damaging the environment. In cartridges, for every 100,000 produced, we use 40 tonnes of plastic, which is huge. And this is something we shouldn't be buying into as a university, and we should be doing anything that we can do to prevent harm. And also handing in physical assignments is also an issue of accessibility and fairness. Most students who commute to university because they have external circumstances such as care and responsibilities, being parents, or they have a disability. This is something we should be trying to help with as much as possible, because they've obviously stayed home for a reason. And allowing to submit assignments digitally provides better access and more engagement for those who are commuting to university. Furthermore, just with regards to a point that Pablo added in this motion, international students might have to come back to Newcastle early because they have to hand in a physical copy. We have a perfectly good service which allows you to submit stuff online, which we all use. So that feels a bit unfair that they have to like cut their holiday short with their families to come back just to hand something in. Finally, we already pay like over £9,000 to come to uni. We shouldn't be having to pay any more money to print off work, especially dissertations, which can be quite bulky and expensive. And so, yeah, personally, like my entire undergraduate degree minus my dissertation was online. So there's already like departments that are like doing this. We're just trying to, well, basically the motion's going to resolve to mandate Pablo to go to the schools who aren't doing digital submissions, to like bring them in line with the schools who are already saving students both time and money.
Thank you, Sam. Are there any questions on the motion?
Is it to make it so that the university has to submit it online, the students have to submit it online, or is it like an option to be able to?
Well, like,
Because
so with most assignments, it's like you have to submit, with people who don't do it so far, it's like you have to submit an online and a print-off copy, but that's literally because the lecturer just doesn't want to print it off themselves. And so, like, it'd be making sure that the university mandates those lecturers to make sure they're not making it a requirement to submit it physically, so it just all stays online through Turnitin, which we already pay a lot of money for.
Okay, on the motion it says to only submit written assignments digitally. But some degrees it's a bit difficult to submit digital assignments, like maths you have to write out and stuff, and all you working out there.
Yeah, so it'd be like a traditional essay format, not necessarily if something was like a poster or something like that.
It's not. We often have sheets that's just all working out, and that's what we get marked, and it'd be incredibly difficult and would take forever to like write it all out, because we'd have to use specifically like page or stick formatting that allows us to write mathematically on a page, and it will take forever to code it all in. And it's not reasonable for some degrees that have like maths intensive, like maths, physics, stats. I'm saying it should be an option, not mandatory. So they should accept it online, but you shouldn't have to submit it online.
Can we put a procedural motion then saying like where applicable then?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then it's if it's like a essay format, so there's give examples of like when it would be more difficult.
I was going to say, like, put it, because obviously the main thing is for the ones who have to use Turnitin. So I had to hand in an assignment yesterday, and it was Turnitin, and then 2 copies and 2 front sheets. So if it was just changed to when submitted via Turnitin, no other paper copy should be submitted alongside that. I think that would cover the fact that you don't use Turnitin, so it would be like, just make it clearer.
Do you use Turnitin? We have a point of clarity real quick.
Very good.
Yeah, as a point of clarity, I think the scope of this motion is for those written assignments, like reports or essays specifically, that are submitted both digitally and physically, to remove the having to go into university to hand in assignments, so that is better for the student experience.
So if it's only physical, then obviously we're not changing it to has to be digital. It's only for those assignments that have to be handed in physically and digitally. Obviously, if it's just physically, that doesn't count.
And it is important to recognize that we do understand that some programs are very much physical based, such as mathematics or stuff that's within sciences that you have equations to write out and fill out. That's not something that we have a resource available online to actually program and all of that. So it is mainly for those, I guess, social sciences.
Would anybody like to submit a formal procedural motion then? Fantastic.
Can I sit down now, Stephen? Or do I have still got
Do
questions?
you want to just check this procedural motion you accept it? 'Cause
Okay.
if it changes it too much, you're welcome to just ask her what she's going to write. I'm sure she's not going to wreck your motion.
No, I agreed with what she was saying, so
No, okay, you can sit down.
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Dying over here. Yes. Presidentially ordered 2-minute samba. Oh yeah. I've got a hammer. If I didn't want this to happen, I wouldn't. I never given them. Oh yes, please. Or just any slice. Is that done? Oh. Oh, you angel. Thank you very much.
Don't be like that.
Are we escaping now, gentlemen? Yes. You're about to miss the transgender policy. Okay. Are you in the rap? Sorry. Are you guys in the rap? No, it's not a rap.
They lost the
We'll also drink to it.
Suggest that we resolve things by combat.
You know, bringing a motion to council probably could get it voted on. If you come back right at the end, then move like one bit of rubbish, I can give you. Agreed.
Right. I actually want to go for a second. It's very nice seeing you. You do a very good job here. It's very good to see you be professional.
I haven't even made one inappropriate joke all night at all. Don't think any of this mic. Sorry? Yeah, yeah. Leave me to be professional for my 1 hour, for my 3 mandated hours a term. Order!
Yeah, it's been accepted, so I'll just get it up on the slide.
Okay, so the procedural amendment has been accepted and should appear on the screen behind me in just a moment. Yeah. But with capitals, I think. Okay, so the newly amended motion 401 should be behind me, which is essentially addresses things that we've just discussed.
And a hard copy. Yeah.
So, on this motion,
Get rid of the other only submit after the turn it in. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. And in a hard copy, do not want to switch it to.
I'm putting them on my file, so it's not.
And then get rid of the other only.
so on this motion, we'll have 2 points either side. The new procedurally amended motion is what we'll be debating. So, can I have anybody who wants to speak up in favour of the motion? Tobias.
So, hi, I'm Tobias, I'm the Chief Police Officer. I'm speaking for this. I'm part of the School of Natural and Environmental Sciences, and they're really bad at doing this, where you have to submit a both physical copy and an online copy, and I think it's quite hypocritical. The number of times where I've had to submit a report of 20 odd pages and then also print it out has been the bane of my existence since starting uni, so I'm in favour of this.
Is there anybody who would like to speak against the motion? Anybody who'd like to speak for the motion? Christopher.
Christopher Winter, Faith and Belief. In the School of Electrical Engineering, we basically have exactly this system. So obviously it's a technical subject, so all of our calculations and work like that is handed in person, so that covers that issue just fine. And then all the other work is handed in online. It gives you a lot more free time. You can do work right up until the last minute, unless the servers are down, which has caused some issues in the past, but people always get over it. So yeah, this is a very, very easy system to use, very, very straightforward, and I see no issue with why anyone should have a problem with this.
Questions? Quick one.
So I just realized in my degree, when we do turn it in, we actually have to go and hand in the digital receipt before turn it in, print that out and hand it in, which, speaking out loud, I feel like they're just being a bit extra now. But
That was an old thing. They had to do that. We had to do that last year and everything, but now this year you don't have to submit the digital receipt as well. You get it just as an email.
No, I'm pretty sure I had an assignment and had to do. Okay, dentistry.
No, all of my digital receipts last year were emails, and we also didn't have to hand in the digital receipt.
It's for your own copy.
Sorry, I'm going to have to return you to format. Sorry. Oh, just like a digital receipt. One for, one against. Well, one final point. Would anybody like to speak against the motion this evening? No. Right then, I will take us over to voting, unless there's any more procedural amendments regarding no. So we'll go to voting. This is a ordinary motion and requires only a simple majority to pass. Once again, you'll be doing this on your smartphone. If you have any problems, just signal to somebody here at the front. And are we ready? And hit it. Ordinary motion 401 passes. So now moving on to our final ordinary motion of tonight. This is motion 402, updating the NUSU transgender policy, and I'd like to invite Tobias to present the motion.
As everyone knows, I'm running Rock the System campaign, and I really wanted to get this in for this week. So the previous transgender policy had some questionable terminology, and the terminology wasn't updated. Also, part of the language used within the document was quite non-binary excluding. So basically, I've consulted with the non-binary and trans rep from the LGBT+ society just to smooth this policy out, add additional terminology and also to separate some of the terminology between current terminology that should be used and terminology that is a bit more outdated. So yeah, basically that's it. It's an update to the policy.
It should be noted that the transgender policy, I think, was circulated as part of the documents for this council, before council, by email. Are there any questions for Tobias on the motion? No? Then I think you're free to sit down.
Thank you.
So, on motion 402, we will have two either side on this motion. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favour of the motion? Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice, I'm the scrutiny officer. Chair of scrutiny even. I approve of this. I think it's really important to make sure that all trans people are included within transgender kind of like advice and education, and people using they pronouns, and also it might be in future to look into adding neo pronouns and things like that into the language used in terms of the constitution and things like that. But I identify as non-binary myself, and I have lots of non-binary friends, and it feels it's really upsetting when you hear things like he or she and stuff like that, because you're you could just use they in the singular, and it's actually easier to do than saying he or she, and so it just feels kind of silly when it's not they.
Woo! Is there anybody who'd like to speak against the motion? Is there anybody who'd like to speak for the motion?
Hi, I'm Courtney Levin. I am a transgender student. I have reviewed the policy, and while I don't claim to speak for all trans people, I'm pretty on the thumb of the whole trans rights movement thing, and yeah, it all seems pretty good. I think it should do well to serve trans students, and the old policy was not as horrendous as the one a few years ago, but it's still pretty bad, so we can always update it. So
And finally, is there anybody who'd like to speak against the motion? No. Well, we'll move on to voting then. So this is motion 402. It's a simple majority vote to pass. Please have your smart devices ready, and the music. Ordinary motion 402 is deemed as passed. Okay, so that's the end of the motions section of tonight's council. And we're now going to move on to... No, sorry, my apologies, motion 403 on the implementation of free graduations. How could I forget? Very important. Please, Katie, come to the stand.
Hello. So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's to try and lobby the university to give us free graduations. We all pay £9,250. Ouch. I think it should be included in that. So I haven't just graduated as well. It's still a bit sore. But £48 gown hire, £25 for an extra ticket, £10 to watch on a screen in another room. So yeah, basically asking for your backing to take this to the university and give us the free graduations we deserve. Yeah, there's other stuff on there. Yeah, so in terms of there was a big hidden costs campaign last year in terms of all the extra costs we pay as students, disc binding, I know some of that's been already mentioned, but even food, cost of living, everything, I think we pay enough, and I think it's a bit sour to end our university experience yet again, spending a load of money. So yeah, let me go to university with this and ask for it to be free for all.
Are there any questions to Katie? No, then you're free to sit down.
Oh yeah, there is.
Sorry.
Do you know of any other universities that also do free graduation?
Yeah, I think it should be on the page. Oh no, it's not. Oops. Yeah, sorry, they're all Scottish universities though who also don't pay graduation fees, which even more backs up the point that what is our fees for. So yeah, let's be the first in the UK to do it.
Like tampons.
There's, yeah.
Charlotte.
Obviously, this covers summer 2020, which is generally undergraduate students. Would you consider extending this to the December and November graduations for postgraduates?
It depends how quickly it would get passed. I mean, I'll take it as quickly as I can. I know I've only got a year myself, so I want to get this passed before the end of my term.
For 2020?
Yeah, it's to be implemented within the next financial year, which is summer 2020. Yeah.
Maybe we need to say summer 2020 and beyond.
Yeah, it just is a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm happy to put
So it makes it look like it's just not
Students
just a
from,
one.
say from, rather than of, like from summer 2020.
Joe, would you like to procedurally amend that then?
While
that happens, while that happens, are there any further questions? Sorry, you there.
You obviously mentioned the ticket fees as well, and I wonder if this would cover that as well, so if those would be cancelled.
What fees?
Ticket fees.
Oh yeah, it's for all. It's for it to be.
How would that affect the availability of the places in the actual graduation ceremony? Because obviously people could just bring.
No, it would work the same. There just wouldn't be a financial addition on it, so it would be the same amount of places available. It would be first come first served basis, but you just wouldn't be paying for it.
So just because basically at the moment you get 2 people to come with you automatically, and then it's a first come first basis, and you have to pay. So you just take the financial bet and still be first come first basis. If that makes sense. So
Right.
you can still do that anyway, but you have to pay for it. So just take the financial.
It's accepted. Okay, so that procedural amendment is accepted to be from summer. Owen.
Make the tickets as well free, yeah?
All of it, yeah.
On the thing, it only says cost of gown hair.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Is that an amendment?
Yeah, that is.
I get to do one.
Please come to the front.
Forgot to read over it.
Would you say cost of graduation for all
Yeah.
Cost of graduation.
Sorry.
Do we know what the cost running graduation, like,
There's a pot of money which is a hardship fund for WP students, but that's also included in there in terms of us taking on so many more, which is amazing. We've taken on so many more WP students. That's not going to be able to cover it all. And in
how
terms
much does it cost the uni?
Graduation is costing every year, like.
how much does it cost?
say if
The university.
Free, how much would the uni then have to pay?
I'd say it's around 200 grand.
Okay.
Yeah.
The front.
I haven't got a question. I just wanted to say something for it.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait,
Sorry,
we
that'll
just
come
I'll
in,
wait.
that'll
I'll
come in.
wait.
Are there any further questions on the motion or procedural amendments?
That's fine.
Okay, all procedural amendments have been accepted. I'll take 2 either side on this motion. So, anybody to speak for the motion? Go with you, Susie.
I think this is really, really good. As someone from a low-income background anyway, I know that there is that thing, but it's another thing of me having to go and get that, and it makes me feel like different almost, because I know other people that wouldn't have to do that, and it's just another burden. And it's generally, what shocked me was my friends have graduated because I did the year abroad, and they were telling me how much it cost. And I was like, it's the fact is you have to graduate. Like, you don't have to actually go to the ceremony, but everyone wants to go to the ceremony, and it's a way for like the university to make money off that. And even if they don't profit from it, it's the fact that they still do it, and you have to give it back. And I just think it's really good, because even with the pictures, and I know some people that didn't get any of the professional photos done because they'd already had to pay for the cost for the gown, so they couldn't afford it. So they just had to just rely on just their family member taking a picture of them under the arch, and they never got the nice one to be framed. So I think it's another thing that excludes people from there. And I think I was so happy when I read it. I was like,
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
You can sit down now.
Brilliant. I was just loving it too.
Is there anybody to speak against the motion?
This is not entirely against it. I completely agree with scrapping the cost for the gown and for the first 2 tickets. the only real problem I see with this is with the additional one being first come, first serve. Usually the deterrence is the price, so people won't buy loads of tickets that they might not use. Instead, if we scrap the additional cost of the cost of the additional tickets, it might mean that the first people going on booking might get loads of tickets and then might not actually use it, and people coming after might not get the chance to invite that one extra person to come along. It's the only difference.
Point of information. I think they limit you to the number of extra ones you're allowed anyway. So even when you're buying, I think they limit you. I don't know if it's
What usually happens is basically, so you get 2 free tickets, so your mom, dad come, or mum and whoever, or siblings, whatever, and then they release them first come, first serve for paid tickets online. And then if they're not used up on the day, whatever's left is kind of first come, first serve. So I think like the financial, for me personally, doesn't really affect that because it's still like on first come, first basis. So it's not necessarily privileging anyone.
But the issue is for the...
Two, I don't know if it's a 2 extra tickets anyway.
You know,
You know,
I bought 8.
you bought 8.
Yeah.
Maybe we should maybe do that.
I think there's that issue anyway, because obviously if you can afford to buy 10 extra tickets, you're going to anyway. So I think you've got that issue whether it's financial or not. Like, I understand that it would deter more, but obviously some people can buy it. Okay, sorry.
Anyone else speak in favour of the motion? Katie.
Is to rid of money being linked to your privilege and what you can, how brilliant or however many people that you have in the ceremony that day. It's to rid of money giving you more. So that is something in and of itself, whether people get 8 more or 0, that's up to you how many you ask for, but it's ridding of the money being linked to it. With people who have more money getting more people attending their graduation ceremony is not fair in the slightest, and that's the point of the motion.
Would anybody like to speak against the motion? No. One final point for the motion. Matty Lacey.
I think it's actually a fantastic, fair, rational policy overall. The mass profits made by the university should be put back to the students, and I think already people are in crippling debt, and that's what's caused a lot of the mental health crisis that we face. And if we don't stand up as a union and say we're all entitled to at least a decent graduation ceremony, what is the point? In terms of all the money as well that the bosses of the university face and your representatives, it's got to take a stand really against that, so it's fantastic to see. Yeah, I'm really forward to it.
Any final speaker to speak against the motion this evening? No, then we'll move on to voting. Once again, this is this motion only requires a simple majority to pass. So please have your smart devices ready, and if you have any problems, please signal somebody at the front. Sorry.
Points of information looking on the university website as to about the extra tickets.
Brief one,
So you basically get you're initially limited to 2 extra tickets for 3 weeks. After that 3-week period, you can buy an unlimited amount. So it is possible at the start of the purchasing period to
be limited
their ticket because it's limited at that point.
Thanks, Tim.
So moving on to voting now. Please have your smart devices ready, and we'll begin voting. And motion 403 passes. So this now successfully concludes the motion section of this evening's Student Council, and we'll move on to the elections for positions selected by Council. This is a section that we had in Council in the first Council of this year. These elections are essentially to fill places that were not filled at that Council. So the various committees that we have places available on are 3 places on the Disciplinary Committee, 2 places on the Education Executive Committee, 2 places on the Scrutiny Committee, and 1 volunteer rep on the Volunteering Executive, and 2 representatives for employability schemes on the Volunteering Executive. Now, I'll ask the respective chairs of those committees just to briefly explain what each committee is and what it does, so that you know what you're applying for. So first of all, I'd like to ask Alice just to stand up and give a... Oh, where is Alice? Well, we'll come back to that. I'd like to ask Pablo to stand up and just briefly explain what the Education Executive is and does, and then we'll ask for nominations for the 2 places on that committee.
Very briefly, the Education Executive Committee is where all the school reps attend to have the conversations and the direction that we want for education at the university. So for example, next meeting is going to be around assessment and feedback, and what kind of assessments and feedback we want at university for a better learning experience of the students. So if you're interested, go for it.
Woo! So if you'd like to nominate yourself for one of the 2 places on the Education Executive, please make yourself known to Angela here on my left. Anybody like to nominate themselves at all? Oh, fantastic. Oh, contested. Could you grab Peter? If you don't mind explaining she's just the chair of the disciplinary and scrutiny, there's nobody else that sits over here. Casey, do you know who might be able to do scrutiny as well? Can you do those 2?
Getting too slept.
These are open. Right. Have we given out? Yeah, we've got votes to go. Yeah. Once I got them. Okay, because we have 2 places available on the Education Executive and we've received 3 nominations. This is a contested election. So you will vote for the 3 candidates you like by ranking them in order of preference on the voting slip you should have been handed. If you haven't been handed a voting slip, please just put your hand up and we'll come round and find you one. So the 3 candidates today up for election today are Matty Lacey, Charlotte Page Bolton and Elizabeth Mead. And could I just ask each one of those candidates to stand up and just give a brief sentence on why they'd like to serve on the Education Executive Committee. Starting with Matty, please.
To make the education system more diverse at Newcastle and represented. In my first year, I campaigned in the philosophy department to get recap for people in recorded lectures, so I've had experience of that. I'm just trying to get more feedback engagement with the course as well, in general. So yeah, I think I've got that experience and just really passionate to get on.
Charlotte Bolton, if you could. Sorry.
I'm a postgrad, so I would kind of like to bring a bit of a postgrad voice to this as well, because I think I've learned a lot through my 3.5 years here. I've been talking to a lot of postgraduate students about their education. I think it'd be nice to bring a voice from underrepresented groups, like international students who might not feel confident enough to bring their issues with education. And I care about things like Sean's amazing motion for digital submissions. I'd like to do things about that, or like kind of moving away from 100% assignments, which are really stressful for students. So yeah, I would like to do that. Thanks.
And finally Elizabeth Mead.
various things such as like what bits of assignments that don't really make sense in the context of our course, and we also have our math graded by a computer, which doesn't really. It's been very stressful for students because they don't feel it really accurately represents what they're able to do, and I'm sure that other science courses have these sorts of issues as well. And I've heard from students in courses in general that there are lots of things they wish they could improve. So first thing, I would definitely want to make sure that students have a voice in how their courses are taught, because it seems that a lot of them have issues with various things that are going on, and I would be willing to listen to any and all suggestions on any sort of course. Woo!
So if I could just ask you to rank the candidates in your order of preference there, but if I could also ask you, if there's a box at the top, if you could just add which committee that election was for, which was the Education Executive Committee, just to make counting easier. Also, you don't have to unstaple the those things. It's okay if you have, though. We'll work it out. No, yeah, each election is on a fresh page. Just. No, my apologies. Okay, so now moving on to the volunteering executive. If I could just ask Eleanor to stand and explain what the volunteering executive does.
Thanks, that's nice. The volunteering exec basically meets to. It was put in place because every other department has an exec, and the volunteering department had moved from what's called SCAN to volunteering, Go Volunteer, and it was set up so that students had a voice on the volunteering that they were doing. They don't do like grants and stuff like Society's exec does, but they look at any issues that are arising. They give reports on the different project leads that are going on. They also invite students to come forward if they've got a new Go Volunteer project, if they want to set that up, and the committee will just speak and sort of about what's going on, and yeah, any issues that they can report back to me to see if I can sort anything out. Oh, and yeah, and employability as well. And sort of what skills people want from volunteering and how we can help and support students to make sure that what they do will help them after.
So there are 3 vacancies on this committee, 1 for a Go Volunteer representative and 2 representatives for employability schemes. If you would like to nominate yourself to work on the volunteering executive as either of those separate roles, please make yourself known now. I'm loving the new liberal application of music to student council. We really spiced up the life of student council. Are you? Yes, good man. Okay, so uncontested then. So we've received one nomination for the Go Volunteer representative, that's Ali Zahad, and one nomination for a representative for employability schemes, and that's Matthew James Sykes. Those are uncontested elections, and so unless anybody has any objections to those candidates, they are deemed as elected, and so congratulations, essentially. Okay, so now moving on to the disciplinary committee. Now, this is normally chaired by the chair of scrutiny. Unfortunately, she's had to leave this evening. So, Katie, if I could just ask you.
Okay. So, if a disciplinary motion comes to council, the disciplinary committee will get together and discuss before it comes to council, and they decide on what happens. So that's like censure, non-censure, disciplinary motions.
No confidence.
No, it doesn't go to them.
Oh.
Okay, any questions? It's pretty self-explanatory. Woo! Clap, clap, clap.
Okay, so there are 3 places vacant on the disciplinary committee, and yeah, nominations are open. If you'd like to nominate yourself to sit on the disciplinary committee, again, please make your way to the front now and make yourself known. There's one. There's 2. One final call for nominations. Would anybody else like to nominate themselves to be on the disciplinary committee? There's one nominated place available still. No. Okay, well, we've received 2 nominations there. That's Miles Ogden. I'm really sorry if I've mispronounced anyone's name. And Blade Rumfit. My apologies. Again, once again, this is, as there are fewer nominations than there are places available, these are uncontested, and therefore you are deemed elected unless anybody has any objections. No, well then, congratulations once again. And the final committee with places to be elected tonight is 2 places on the scrutiny committee, which is again chaired by Alice. So, Katie, if I could ask you again to explain scrutiny.
So, scrutiny committee convene and they scrutinise our meetings. So, we have ops once a week, so they go through that to make sure that everything's okay and that everything that was said is factually correct. Yeah, don't know what else to say on it. They scrutinise. It's another great committee. Alice is great. And yeah,
Alice is fab. She's such a good.
Please put yourselves forward for it.
So there are 2 places available on scrutiny. Would anybody like to nominate themselves to sit on there? No one at all? Oh, awkward.
I said ops is a meeting we have once a week with the officers. Pardon?
Sabbatical
officers and the leadership team that
You basically get to see what is going on in the student union and pick up on anything you think is wrong or you're not happy with, or you get to see reports.
Big reports.
How often
Big
do they meet?
reports.
Don't leave the last place ever. Once a week.
Sorry. Do they have a question? Sorry. So we've received one nomination for scrutiny committee, and that's Blade Rumfit. If anybody has any objections to his their ascension to committeeship, no. Okay, then congratulations. You are elected to scrutiny. Okay, so that ends the election section of council and brings us to student notices. Are there any students that would like to lodge any notices in this council?
Down to the Labour Society launch tomorrow, 4 to 8 p.m. downstairs in the lounge area. It'll be great to see people from council. It's just going to be social, so yeah, appreciate your support.
So yeah, Rock the System's still going on this week. We've got a film screening tomorrow at 5 till 7, and that's basically showing the documentary The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. And on Sunday, if anyone wants to come, there is a vigil to basically remember trans people who have lost their lives over last year.
Can I just promote that the Jazz Orchestra Society is holding a jazz jam next week? Instead of it being on the traditional Thursday, it's now going to be on a Tuesday. And instead of being at Bar Loco, it's taking place at the Duncal, 7 till 11. Be there. It's a great night. If anyone's been there before, I'm sure you'll testify to that. So update yourself, Stormy.
Woo! Woo! It's on the way to Jesmond.
I don't know. It's like 10 minutes walk.
Just opposite Branding Park.
Right, okay. Branding Park, yes.
Jump on with all this fun society promotion. Rag speed dating, guys. You'll love it.
Sorry, what's rag?
What's rag? Oh, we'll tell you all about rag.
What's rag?
Crazy Giving Society. It's amazing. Yeah, speed dating. It's fully LGBT plus inclusive as well, and it's got a lift, so it's accessible, which is great. And yeah, it's going to be really fun, and you get to win games.
When is it?
Yeah, 26th of November.
So if you're not single.
What is
Huh?
It's friendship dating.
Yeah, so speed dating is an event where we get like 200 students down in venue, loads of tables set up for like cute little dates, and then how it runs is you get 2 minutes to date one person. So you're like, hi, what's your name? Tell me all about yourself, whatever. What's your favourite biscuit, which is my personal favourite. And then yeah, 2 minutes, and then you swap, and so you meet like 50 people in a row, and it's really fun.
Woo!
But yeah, woo!
Yeah.
That's about it.
Are there any further student notices before I move on? No. Okay, so that moves us on to our final section of tonight's Student Council, which is the open debate. The title of this evening's open debate is the location of Students' Union Council. Pablo, were you wanting to open this one?
Yeah.
Do you want to come up to the front? Oh, no, you can stand if you want.
Basically, the debate of this is whether this location, well, from my point of view, this location might not be accessible for a lot of people. There is issues around the space, about disabilities, like, for example, audio disabilities, so people that cannot hear properly. And there are other locations around campus that might be much more suitable. But on the other hand, is whether people would like to take council out of the student union. So, does anyone have anything to say?
Does this room have a hearing loop for people who are hard of hearing?
No.
So, like in lecture theatres, then usually sometimes it's a sync.
One of the things.
Yeah.
So, would anybody like to stand and speak on where they think that the location of Student Council should be?
Yeah. Actually, like listening, because I think this came up last time, but actually thinking about it, it might be good to move it to a different location, whether that would be a lecture theatre that is more accessible if we can get space for it. So yeah, it would be probably better, and also because the lift is sometimes quite dodgy in the student union, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So yes, it would be nice actually if we thought about a different location. So maybe Curtis Auditorium. I think that's accessible if that could happen. Yeah.
Actually, Pablo and I had sort of this talk a while ago, and it was going to be brought to the first council, but then that ran so late. And so one of the ideas was actually to have it in Keaton Lomas, which, if you know, is quite a very formal boardroom.
People might not know. There are no lectures there.
Yeah. So it's in Armstrong Building. It is a very nice sort of boardroom, I would call it, with ability to even, there's microphones on each sort of table and area. There's ability to video conference as well, so it's great to actually see who's speaking, which I know just my mom watched this last time through the live stream, and one of the things is that sometimes these microphones don't quite pick up everything, camera-wise. You guys do as much of a great job as you can, but it is quite difficult just for live streaming, and that would sort of ease access for NUTV and everything else. And as I said, it's a very nice room. It is accessible. It's on the first floor, and I think it would be nice to actually see council sort of shift into that sort of formal type of space, less hot as well because it's quite hot in here. But again, the concern is that you will remove it out of the student union, and that is a university-owned building, while this building is completely owned by us. But it is something to consider if you would like that. It's nice, so go visit.
Still get pizza?
Yeah. Yes, it's not popular.
No. Sorry, no, you won't be able to eat in that room.
You won't be able to eat in it, but the idea would be you could eat outside of it.
You can eat outside in the students' union in this room, and then walk across.
I personally don't know that room at all,
Yeah.
so question to you guys. Does it give opportunity to have a setup like this? So, for example, lecture theatre and whatnot, it's very frontward facing, it's not a lot of... There's a lot of opportunity for people to face each other and discuss that way.
Yeah. There's 4 spaces right up in the front, which I figured Stephen would obviously sit right there because of the chair. And then it is in sort of an exact U-shaped boardroom.
What I would say is that I do really like the fact that this dynamic is really fun and approachable. Personally, we all have quite a lot of stresses in our life and attend really formal meetings, and I think in that room, the dynamic, we've sat in it in Senate, and it is quite strict and formal, and it's not particularly friendly atmosphere. So I like this space. I feel like it still is quite we can just joke around and have fun, because it's our evenings as well, and we want to kick it not too seriously. Plus, also, if we're going for drinks afterwards, we're going to have to trek back to Luther's. It's not going to have that whole social aspect afterwards where we can just go downstairs to Luther's from here. So
it would go against all the work we've done in trying to make it more of an informal,
fun atmosphere. And I feel here everyone can be friends and meet each other properly. So.
Christopher.
Yeah.
Just a question, actually. For how long has council been held in this room? Always?
No, they used to have a debating...
There was a debating chamber, but it got knocked down.
So how long has it been held in this room?
Since the refurb, 30 years or so.
30 years.
Or so, yeah.
That's when the refurb was done.
Sorry.
Is it not worthwhile investing in the assets that we already have to improve them rather than just relocating groups around to find better assets? Because we're not really reinvesting into the infrastructure we already have. We're simply going to use another space and basically use the space behind.
I mean, it would be up to the university to give us money to renovate our spaces, and that's always a challenge to ask the university for money.
At the moment, we don't have that.
We're also a registered sort of building, so there's only so many changes we can actually do within that.
Yeah, going off what Toby said, is it and kind of what you said as well, is it possible to maybe make this room, accessible for hearing aids? And I don't know the specific terminology, but yeah, make it accessible for hearing aids and maybe invest a little in the lift so it doesn't break down as much. And then this room, which we already like and seems to function quite well for the social aspect, like you were saying, maybe it can continue to be used, and then it's not loads of money and an issue for, the listed building problem, because it's just a couple of minor workings. Yeah.
Mark.
All I can say with the filming of this is that generally we might even start setting up about 2 hours beforehand. It's a university building; they might be using the room for us. So
And how do we guarantee that we have it every council anyway? We might have to keep moving.
One thing that I would say about filming is that the systems, I mean, I think the technology in that room is very advanced because it's especially created for video conferences with other campuses.
So you need NUTV, is that what you're saying?
No, it would be still recorded, and actually it would be more accessible. And I think
So NUTV would record it?
Yeah.
But they would be able to use the same systems at a higher level, which also gives them a chance to sort of experiment with more of the video conferencing style videography and all.
For example, I think we could experiment with the option of video conferencing with the students in other campuses as well.
Yeah.
Which would be nice.
Christopher.
Just as we often like to do, take this on a more metaphysical note. We've been here, as I've just clarified, in this room for 30 years. Our forebearers are on these walls. It's very easy to fix a lift, and I'm sure that if we got round to it, we'd get it sorted. I'm sure that if we got round to it, we could get things for accessibility put in this room, and other such things. And also, this is our students' union. We own this building, we own this room. I just think it would be a really big shame if we reject that, dump that tradition and embrace some cold, feelingless modernism, So, I think that's the first clap I'm ever going to have in here, so
Anybody else to speak on the open debate? No? Well then, that closes the open debate. Thank you very much there, Jasmine. I think we'll move on to the raffle.
Yes, baby. But I win raffle. Of course. There's no matter what
This is the time.
Okay, please have your tickets ready. First winner tonight is 426 to 430. Oh, thank you,
It's a fix.
Just even knows that.
Second winner.